"You're coming with me," said the prince to the woman beaten for having 3 daughters. The church bell tolls. Dust swirls in the village square. A battered woman lies in the dirt as her children cry out. The crowd turns their faces away except for one man. A prince, cloaked in furs, halts his horse and speaks words no one dares to imagine. But what begins as a shocking rescue hides a deeper danger. Whispers spread through the court. A peasant under the prince's roof. Her past marked by shame. Her future chained to a husband who will not let her go. And while the council demands a royal marriage to seal an alliance, the prince's heart is already caught where it never should have been. Can a woman condemned for bearing daughters rise to become a princess? Or will the weight of tradition crush them both before their love can take root? Comment below and tell me where in the world you're joining from. And if this story made you pause for a moment, hit that subscribe button for more. The winter morning hung gray and heavy over the village square, where frost-rimmed cobblestones echoed with the slow gathering of townsfolk. Market stalls stood half empty, their vendors hunched against the cold, as Hans Lenz's angry shouts pierced the bitter air. "Worthless woman!" The miller's face was red with rage and drink as he dragged Anna across the square by her arm. Her worn dress caught on the rough stones, and she stumbled, trying to keep her feet beneath her. 3 girls you've given me. 3 useless mouths to feed. Anna's daughters huddled together near the baker's stall, tears freezing on their cheeks. Marguerite, the eldest, held her sisters close, while Lise pressed her face into Katja's hair, unable to watch. "Please, Hans," Anna whispered, her voice barely carrying over the morning wind. "Not here. Not in front of the children." Her plea only seemed to enrage him further. His hand struck her face with a crack that made several onlookers flinch. Anna fell hard against the frozen ground, a trickle of blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. "Curse you and your daughters," Hans spat, swaying slightly. "You've brought nothing but ill fortune since the day I married you." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some turned away, pretending to examine the meager winter produce on display. Others watched with cruel amusement, whispering behind gloved hands. A few women crossed themselves, but none dared step forward to help. "She's always been odd, that one," muttered a cloth merchant to his neighbor. "Too proud for a miller's wife." "Serves her right," came the response, getting above herself with her fancy ways. But others saw differently. The baker's wife wrung her hands in her apron, remembering how Anna had shared her last loaf with a hungry child just last week. The blacksmith's daughter recalled Anna's gentle hands binding her burned finger, soothing the pain with cool herbs and softer words. Hans raised his hand again, but before he could strike, the clatter of carriage wheels and horses' hooves echoed off the surrounding buildings. The sound grew louder, and around the corner came a fine coach bearing the royal seal, its dark wood gleaming even in the gray morning light. The carriage drew to a sudden halt. Inside sat Prince Leopold, returning from court in his hunting clothes, his expression darkening as he took in the scene before him. 2 attendants sat across from him, their faces carefully blank. Without waiting for his footman, Leopold opened the carriage door and stepped down. His boots struck the cobblestones with purpose, and the crowd parted before him like water. Even in his riding gear, there was no mistaking his bearing, every inch the crown prince of the realm. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice cut through the winter air, sharp as a blade. Hans, too drunk to recognize the danger, squared his shoulders. "Teaching my wife her place, your high silence." Leopold's command cracked like a whip. His eyes moved to Anna, who was trying to push herself up from the ground, her face bruised and bloody. Something in his expression shifted, a mixture of fury and tenderness that made the watching crowd hold its breath. In 3 long strides, he reached Anna's side. Without hesitation, He knelt beside her, heedless of the dirt on his fine clothes. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice gentle but brooking no argument. He helped her to her feet with careful hands. "My daughters," Anna managed to say, looking toward where the three girls still huddled together. "Them too," Leopold assured her, then turned to his attendants. "Help the children into the carriage." The attendants moved swiftly, gathering the frightened girls and guiding them toward the coach. Leopold himself supported Anna, his arm steady. Around her waist, as she limped forward, Hans, finally realizing what was happening, took an unsteady step forward. "Now see here." One look from Leopold stopped him cold. The prince's eyes held such cold fury that Hans stumbled backward, nearly falling. The watching villagers stood frozen as Leopold helped Anna into the carriage, then followed her inside. The door closed with a decisive click, the royal seal catching the weak winter light as it swung past. The driver cracked his whip, and the horses moved forward, their hooves striking sparks from the cobblestones. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the carriage disappeared around the corner, leaving only the echo of wheels and the memory of a prince who had knelt in the dirt to help a miller's wife. The royal carriage swayed and jolted along the frozen country roads, its wheels crunching through patches of snow. Inside the plush interior, Anna Lehn sat rigid with fear, her three daughters huddled close against her skirts. Little Katja whimpered softly, while Marguerite and Lise pressed their faces into their mother's worn dress, their eyes wide with uncertainty. Anna's hands trembled as she stroked their hair, her thoughts racing. Surely she would be punished for causing such a spectacle in the square. A miller's wife, drawn into a prince's carriage. It went against every rule of proper society. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a frightened bird. Prince Leopold sat across from them, his tall frame filling the opposite bench. Though his hunting clothes were less formal than court attire, everything about him spoke of nobility, from his straight posture to the signet ring glinting on his finger. Yet when he spoke, his voice carried unexpected gentleness. "Be at peace. Frau Lenz, no harm will come to you or your children." He leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but kind. "You will be safe at my hunting lodge, where you may serve as housekeeper. Your daughters will be welcome there as well." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "Your grace is too generous, but surely I am not worthy." "You are worthy of safety," Leopold interrupted firmly. "And your children deserve peace." His eyes fell to Katja, who'd stopped crying and now watched him with curious innocence. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The carriage continued its journey through the afternoon, winding deeper into the forest. Bare branches creaked overhead, and the early winter darkness began to settle around them. Anna felt the tension slowly leaving her shoulders as the miles stretched between them and the village square. Her bruises ached, but the warm interior of the carriage and the prince's quiet presence gave her a sense of security she had not known in years. As dusk deepened into evening, torchlight appeared through the trees, marking their approach to the hunting lodge. The carriage wheels rattled over a stone bridge, and Anna caught glimpses of a substantial building rising before them, not as grand as a palace, but far finer than anything she had known. Servants emerged with lanterns as the carriage drew to a halt. Their faces registered obvious shock at the sight of Prince Leopold, helping a bruised peasant woman and 3 small girls down from his personal coach. Anna heard their muffled whispers, but kept her eyes lowered, clutching Lise's hand while Marguerite carried a sleeping Katja. "Frau Weber," Leopold called to an older woman in a neat black dress. "Please see that Frau Lenz and her daughters are given the blue chamber. They will need warm baths, fresh clothing, and a good meal. At once, Your Grace." The housekeeper curtsied, then gestured for Anna to follow. The blue chamber proved to be larger than Anna's entire cottage, with a crackling fire already warming the space. Servants bustled in with steaming water, clean linens, and soft clothes for the children. A young maid named Mari gently cleaned Anna's cuts and bruises with herb-scented water, while another brought in a tray laden with bread, cheese, and hot soup. The girls, exhausted but comforted by the warmth and kindness, fell asleep quickly. On the soft bed, Anna sat beside them, scarcely able to believe the day's events. Her body ached, but for the first time in years, she felt no fear of what the night might bring. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered prayers of gratitude. "Thank you, merciful Father," she murmured, stroking Katya's curls. "Thank you for delivering us." Her own eyes grew heavy, and she allowed herself to sink down beside her daughters. The fire's warm glow and their gentle breathing lulled her into a deep, peaceful sleep, the first true rest she had known in years. Outside her door, the lodge settled into its nighttime quiet, while in his study, Prince Leopold sat long into the night, thinking of the courage he had witnessed in a simple miller's wife, and the strange twist of fate that had brought her to his care. The first rays of dawn crept through the lodge's frosted windows, painting golden streaks across Anna's borrowed chamber. Her eyes fluttered open, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar softness of the bed. Then yesterday's events rushed back, the beating, the prince's intervention, the desperate carriage ride. But where were her daughters? Anna rose quickly, wrapping a worn shawl around her shoulders. The stone floors felt cold beneath her feet as she followed the sound of childish giggles echoing from below. The scent of fresh bread led her down narrow servant stairs to the kitchen, where she found a heartwarming sight. Marguerite, Lise, and little Katya stood in wonderment before the massive kitchen hearth, their faces glowing in its warmth. Copper pots and pans hung in gleaming rows from iron hooks, while baskets of winter vegetables lined the walls. The kitchen maids darted nervous glances at the unexpected guests as they worked, though the cook, a stout woman with flour-dusted arms, kept shooting concerned looks at the thin children. "Mama, look!" Katya exclaimed, pointing to a fresh loaf cooling on the wooden counter. "It smells like heaven." Without thinking, Anna stepped forward and began folding her sleeves. "Might I help?" she asked the cook softly. "I've worked in a mill these past 12 years. I know my way around bread." The cook hesitated, then nodded. Soon Anna's capable hands were deep in dough, kneading with practiced movements. Her daughters watched in fascination as she shaped the soft mass with gentle confidence. The kitchen maids gradually relaxed as Anna worked quietly alongside them, asking for nothing, offering small smiles and murmured thanks when they passed near. "You've a good touch with the dough," the cook admitted after watching Anna work. "Most fine ladies wouldn't know a proving bowl from a soup tureen." "I'm no fine lady," Anna replied simply, teaching Marguerite how to shape a small roll. "Just grateful for your kindness." Throughout the day, Anna found comfort in the familiar rhythms of kitchen work. She showed Lise how to fold napkins, while Katya helped by sneaking bits of apple from the fruit bowl, making the kitchen maids hide their smiles. The warm hearth and honest labor soothed Anna's battered spirit more than any fine chamber could dot as corner. Evening approached, servants began preparing the long oak table in the dining hall. Anna helped carry in platters of roasted meat and winter vegetables, then tried to retreat to the kitchen with her daughters. But the cook caught her arm. "His Highness expects all in the household to sup together when he's in residence," she whispered. "Even us below-stairs folk. Come now, there's places at the far end." Anna's heart fluttered as she guided her daughters to seats at the servants' end of the table. She smoothed their hair and straightened their borrowed aprons, whispering reminders about manners. "Elbows off the table, Katya love. Small bites, Lise. Remember to thank the servants who serve you, Marguerite." Prince Leopold entered as the last candles were lit, his hunting clothes exchanged for a fine dark coat. Though he took his place at the head of the table, his eyes often strayed to where Anna sat with her children. He watched as she helped Katya cut her meat into tiny pieces, as she praised Lise for remembering to use her napkin, as she shared quiet words of encouragement with Marguerite. After the meal, when most had retired, Leopold's chamberlain approached him in the study. The older man's face was creased with worry as candlelight flickered across the wood-paneled walls. "Your Highness," he began carefully, "word will spread quickly about the miller's wife. Questions will be asked. Gossip at court moved faster than winter winds and having a peasant woman so close to your household." Leopold stood at the window, gazing out at the snowy forest. His reply, when it came, was quiet but firm. "Let them whisper." Anna's hands trembled as she carried the fresh linens up the polished wooden stairs. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes in its golden beams. 4 days had passed since her arrival at the hunting lodge, days filled with quiet work and blessed peace. Her daughters were flourishing under the kind attention of the servants, their cheeks growing rosy with good food and rest. The upper hall stretched before her, its dark panels gleaming with beeswax polish. She paused at the carved door to Leopold's chamber, gathering her courage before knocking softly. "Enter," came his clear voice. Anna stepped inside, curtsying deeply as she'd been taught. "The fresh linens, my lord." Leopold sat at a massive desk by the window, morning light falling across scattered papers. He looked up with that gentle smile that always made her heart flutter strangely. "Thank you, Anna. You may set them there." She moved to place the stack on a side table, but something caught her eye. Official documents lay spread across his desk, their edges trimmed in gold. The royal crest stood out boldly at the top of each page, not just any noble seal, but the grand coat of arms of the ruling house. And there, written in flowing script, was his full title: His Royal Highness Leopold Friedrich Wilhelm, Crown Prince and Heir Apparent. The linens slipped from Anna's suddenly numb fingers, falling in a white cascade. She scrambled to gather them, face burning with mortification. "Forgive me, your Highness," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Leopold rose quickly. "Please, there's no need for." But Anna was already backing toward the door, her whole body shaking. "I did not know. I should never have." She clutched the linens to her chest like a shield. "Please excuse me, Your Highness." She fled before he could speak again. The rest of the day passed in a fog of fear. Anna's mind raced with the implications. Not just the noble, but the crown prince himself. She had been eating at his table, sleeping under his roof, allowing her children to run freely through his halls. The scandal of it all could destroy not just her, but her precious daughter's dot. As evening fell and the lodge grew quiet, Anna paced. In her small chamber, the girls slept peacefully in the adjoining room, Katya's soft snores mixing with the crackle of the hearth fire. She knew what she had to do, though it broke her heart. Wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, Anna slipped out into the corridor. Candlelight flickered from Leopold's study. She hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come," he called. Anna entered, forcing herself to meet his eyes as she curtsied deeply. "Your Highness, I must speak with you." Leopold set aside his papers, his face concerned. "Please, Anna, I asked you to call me Leopold." "I cannot, Your Highness. I cannot remain here at all." Her voice quavered, but she pressed on. "I am only a miller's wife. My presence here will bring scandal upon your name and ruin upon my daughters when word spreads." "Anna, please," she interrupted, then flushed at her boldness. "Forgive me, but I must speak. You have shown us such kindness, more than I could ever repay. But I cannot allow my children to face the shame that would come from staying in your household. We must leave, find work somewhere far from here. Leopold rose and stepped closer. The candlelight caught the silver threading in his coat, the quiet authority in his bearing. Yet his eyes were soft as they met hers. "And yet," he said gently, "I cannot send you back." Anna's breath caught at the tenderness in his voice. She stood frozen, torn between duty and the sudden wild beating of her heart. "I cannot," Leopold repeated softly, "and I will not." Candlelight flickered against the rough wooden table in Anna's small chamber as she guided Lise's hand across a slate. "Like this, dear heart," she murmured, helping her middle daughter form the letter A. Beside them, Marguerite practiced her own letters with fierce concentration, while little Katya dozed in Anna's lap, her golden curls catching the warm light. These evening lessons had become precious moments of peace. During the day, Anna kept to her duties, head bowed, speaking only when spoken to. But here, with her daughters, she could forget the growing tension in the lodge. That tension mounted with each messenger who thundered up the drive, bearing letters sealed with bold red wax. Through whispered conversations among the servants, Anna learned these missives came from the royal council, pressing Prince Leopold about his marriage prospects. A foreign duchess, they say, the cook confided to Anna one morning as they kneaded bread together. Been arranging it for months. The council's getting impatient with his delay. Anna's hand stilled in the dough, her heart giving a peculiar twist. She pushed the feeling aside, focusing on teaching her daughters, on keeping them safe and warm. Yet she could not ignore the steady stream of court officials arriving at the lodge, their rich carriages raising dust in the courtyard. These elegant visitors, with their silk coats and powdered wigs, never failed to cast suspicious glances at Anna, the strange woman, they called her in stage whispers, and her children. Their looks held both curiosity and judgment. One particularly cold Sunday morning, Anna dressed her daughters in their cleanest frocks for chapel service. The small stone church served both the lodge and nearby village, its bell calling rich and poor alike to worship. Following proper custom, Anna led her children to the rear pews where common folk sat, while Leopold and his noble guests took their places at the front beneath the carved crucifix. The familiar prayers and hymns should have brought comfort, but Anna felt the villagers' stares burning into her back. Their whispers carried in the hushed air. Above herself, that one, living under his roof, no better than she ought to be, Heat crept up Anna's neck. She fixed her eyes on her prayer book, though the letters blurred. Margaret pressed closer to her side, while Lise clutched her hand. Even little Katya seemed to sense the tension, remaining unusually still. From his place in the front pew, Leopold shifted slightly. Though he faced forward, his shoulders had tensed. Anna knew he could hear the whispers, the cruel judgments. Shame washed over her. She had brought this scandal upon him, upon her children. When the final blessing was given, Anna quickly gathered her daughters, meaning to slip out the back door before the crowd. But Leopold's voice rang out clear and firm. "Mistress Lenz." The chapel fell silent. Anna turned, curtsying deeply as Leopold strode down the center aisle. He wore his finest blue coat, silver buttons gleaming, every inch the prince he was. The watching villagers pressed back against the walls, all eyes following his movement. "Allow me to escort you to the carriage," he said, offering his arm with elegant grace. Anna's throat tightened. "Your Highness, I insist," he said softly, though his eyes held steel. Heart pounding, Anna placed her trembling hand upon his sleeve. Leopold guided her down the aisle, her daughters following close behind. The villagers' faces showed shock, disapproval, raw curiosity. The court officials who had attended service watched with calculating eyes. Outside, Leopold handed Anna into the waiting carriage as formally as if she were a duchess, ensuring her daughters were settled beside her. As they pulled away, Anna caught fragments of excited conversation erupting behind them. Did you see ... The prince himself ... What can it mean ... Anna sat rigid in the carriage, keenly aware that this public display of Leopold's respect, while deeply touching, would only fuel the growing rumors. She glanced at his proud profile as he sat opposite her, and wondered what price they would all pay for his kindness. The bitter wind howled outside the hunting lodge as servants bustled about, hanging evergreen boughs and setting out brass candlesticks for the New Year's feast. Prince Leopold had declared the celebration would include everyone under his roof, from the highest-ranking huntsman to the lowest scullery maid. The warmth from the great hall's enormous fireplace cast dancing shadows on the stone walls as musicians tuned their instruments in the corner in the kitchen. Anna's skilled hands moved swiftly, helping the cook prepare platters of roasted meat and winter vegetables. The familiar work soothed her, though her thoughts kept drifting to the sounds of merriment filtering down from above. Her daughters had been permitted to watch the preparations, and their excited chatter brought a smile to her face. Mistress Lenz called a page boy, appearing at the kitchen door. His Highness requests your presence at the feast. Anna's hands stilled on the loaf of bread she was slicing. There must be some mistake, she said softly. I'm to serve, not... No mistake, the boy insisted. He was quite clear. You and your daughters are to join the company above. Heart fluttering, Anna wiped her hands on her apron. The cook shooed her away with a knowing smile. Go on then. We've matters well in hand here. Upstairs, the great hall blazed with hundreds of candles. Holly and pine draped every window, their fresh scent mingling with wood smoke and roasted meat. Musicians played a lively tune as servants arranged tables in a great U-shape. Anna's daughters crowded close to her skirts, eyes wide at the splendor. Mama, look at all the lights, whispered Katya in wonder. Leopold stood from his place at the head table, and the room fell silent. Welcome, friends, he called out warmly. Tonight we celebrate not just the turning of the year, but the fellowship we share under this roof. His eyes found Anna's, and he gestured to an empty place near his own. Please, join us. Whispers rippled through the gathering as Anna was seated in a position of honor. She felt the weight of curious stares, but Leopold's genuine smile put her somewhat at ease. Her daughters were placed nearby, Marguerite sitting straight-backed and proper, while Lise and Katya could barely contain their excitement. The feast was everything a winter celebration should be. Platters of roasted goose and venison made there, way around the tables. Fresh bread steamed when broken open, and cups of mulled wine brought color to cold, pinched cheeks. The musicians played traditional songs that had everyone's feet tapping beneath the tables as the night progressed. Leopold called for the tables to be moved aside for dancing. Anna watched contentedly as her daughters twirled with other children, their laughter bright as silver bells. The candlelight softened every face, making the evening feel like something from a dream. She was so absorbed in watching the dancers that she didn't notice Leopold's approach until he stood before her, hand extended. Would you honor me with a dance, Mistress Lenz? Anna's breath caught. Your Highness, I don't know the proper steps. The tune is simple enough, he said softly. Trust me to lead you. With trembling fingers, she placed her hand in his. He guided her to the center of the hall, where other couples moved in graceful circles. Her daughters stopped their play to watch, eyes shining with delight. Leopold's hand was warm at her waist as he showed her the basic steps. Though her movements were unsure at first, she soon found the rhythm. Around them, the candlelight blurred into a golden glow. The music wrapped them in its melody, and for a precious moment, the weight of class distinction seemed to float away. You've shown remarkable courage these past weeks, Leopold murmured, his voice meant only for her ears. The grace with which you've borne your trials, the tenderness you show your children, the dignity in your bearing. These speak more of true nobility than any title could. Anna's heart quickened at his words, even as she tried to dismiss the dangerous warmth they kindled. You are too kind, Your Highness. Not kind, he corrected gently. Honest. As they turned about the floor, Anna caught glimpses of her daughters watching in wonder. Marguerite stood tall and proud to see her mother treated as a lady, while Lise clasped her hands together in delight. Little Katya bounced in place, clapping with each turn of the dance. For this one enchanted evening, Anna allowed herself to believe in the magic of the moment. Leopold's admiring gaze, the music's sweet spell, her daughter's joy, it filled her heart with a hope she scarcely dared to name, much less embrace. 2 days after the feast, frost etched delicate patterns on the lodge windows as Anna hummed quietly, helping her daughters practice their letters. The peaceful morning shattered when heavy boots echoed down the corridor. A stern-faced man in an elaborate black coat swept into the great hall, followed by 2 clerks clutching leather document cases. Prince Leopold emerged from his study, his shoulders tensing at the sight of the official. "Councillor Weber," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "What brings you from the capital with such urgency?" The councillor's cold eyes swept the room, lingering disapprovingly on Anna and her daughters before he addressed the prince. "Your Highness, I bring matters of grave importance that require immediate attention." He gestured to a private chamber. "If we might speak alone?" Anna gathered her daughters close, ushering them from the hall. But through the heavy oak door, raised voices carried clearly. "The contract is prepared, Your Highness. The Duchess of Saxe-Merseburg awaits only your signature to finalize the alliance. Your father, the king, insists it be done within the month." "The agreement was not to be settled until spring," Leopold protested. "Circumstances have changed. There are rumors, Your Highness, whispers of impropriety that threaten the match. The council feels swift action is needed to quiet such talk." A long silence followed. When Leopold spoke again, his voice was strained. "What else?" Papers rustled. "A petition has been filed with the church court. One Hans Lenz demands the return of his lawful wife and children. He claims they were taken against their will and are being held here improperly. That brute abandoned his rights when he beat her in the square." Leopold's fury rang against the stone walls. "Nevertheless, the law is clear. A wife's place is with her husband. The church will likely rule in his favor unless—" The councillor's voice lowered meaningfully. "Unless Your Highness wishes to openly oppose the petition. Of course, such an action would raise questions about your interest in the woman." Anna pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, tears burning in her eyes. Her worst fears were coming true. She had brought scandal upon the prince, who had shown her nothing but kindness. "Leave the documents," Leopold commanded. "I will review them and give you my answer tomorrow." The councillor's boots clicked away down the corridor. Anna fled to her chamber before the prince could emerge, gathering her daughters close as they prepared for bed. Little Katya's prayers were especially fervent that night. "Please God, don't make us go back to father." Once the girls had drifted to sleep, Anna allowed her tears to fall freely. She watched their peaceful faces in the candlelight. Marguerite's serious brow relaxed in sleep. Lise's hands curled beneath her chin. Katya's thumb tucked trustingly in her mouth. How could she protect them? The law stood against her. The church would condemn her. And worst of all, she was becoming a burden to the one person who had shown them true kindness. Her heart ached as she thought of Leopold. She had seen the way he looked at her when he thought. No one was watching, felt the gentle pressure of his hand during their dance at the feast. But she was no fool. He was heir to the throne, promised to a duchess. Their presence here threatened everything: his reputation, his marriage prospects, perhaps even his crown. She brushed tears from her cheeks. resolution settling over her like a heavy cloak. She must leave before she brought ruin upon him. Better to disappear quietly into the night than watch him forced to choose between duty and kindness. Better to go now. While she still had the strength thought in the great hall below, Leopold paced before the dying fire. The marriage contract lay unopened on a side table, its red seal gleaming accusingly in the firelight. His boots struck a steady rhythm on the stone floor as he wrestled with his conscience. Duty demanded he sign the contract. The alliance would strengthen their borders, fill the treasury, provide an appropriate mother for future heirs. It was what he had been raised to do, what every prince before him had done. Yet his heart rebelled at the thought of sending Anna back to her brutal husband. More than that, it rebelled at the thought of wedding another while she was near. Her quiet strength, her gentle wisdom with her daughters, her rare smile that lit something warm within his chest. How could he sign his life away to a stranger when she had awakened such feelings in him? He raked his fingers through his hair in torment. The path of duty stretched clear before him, the same path he had walked all his life. But for the first time, his heart stood in direct opposition to his crown. The gray hours before dawn shrouded the hunting lodge in silence. Anna's trembling hands folded her daughter's few dresses, tucking them into a worn cloth bundle along with their single wooden doll. Tears blurred her vision as she worked, but she forced them back. She had to be strong now. The embers in the hearth cast a faint glow across the chamber where her daughter still slept peacefully. Marguerite's arm was draped protectively over little Katya, while Lise mumbled softly in her dreams. Anna's heart ached at the sight. These past weeks had been like a beautiful dream-warm beds, abundant food, and most precious of all, safety. But dreams must end. Moving quietly through the shadowed corridors, Anna made her way to the servants' quarters. The head maid, Mrs. Weber, was already awake, preparing for the day's duties. "I must go," Anna whispered, her voice catching. "The prince has shown such kindness, but I cannot bring scandal upon him. We will leave on foot. Please tell no one until midday." Mrs. Weber's weathered face creased with concern. "At least take some bread for the children," she urged, pressing a wrapped loaf into Anna's hands. With the bundle secured and her daughters roused from sleep, Anna led them through the quiet halls. The little ones were still drowsy, asking in whispers where they were going. "Hush now," she soothed. "We must be very quiet." The stable yard was dark and cold, frost crunching beneath their feet. Anna's heart hammered as she guided her daughters toward the back gate. "Just a few more steps. You would leave without saying farewell." Prince Leopold's voice cut through the darkness, making Anna freeze. He stepped from the shadows of the stable doorway, a lantern in his hand casting golden light across his troubled features. "Your Highness," Anna stammered, dropping into a deep curtsy. Her daughters copied her, wobbling slightly in their sleepiness. "I saw the light in your chamber," Leopold said softly. "I feared you might attempt this." "Please," Anna pleaded. "I must go. The scandal, your marriage contract, my husband's petition. I cannot be the cause of your ruin." Leopold set the lantern on a mounting block, its light catching the frost like scattered diamonds. "You speak of my ruin, yet think nothing of your own safety, of your daughters? Better to face hardship than destroy your future," Anna whispered. "The kingdom needs its prince whole and unmarred by scandal. And what of what the prince needs?" Leopold stepped closer, his voice rough with emotion. "What of—" The thunder of hoofbeats interrupted him. A rider galloped into the yard, his horse's flanks steaming in the cold air. The man dismounted quickly, bowing low. "Your Highness, urgent news from the capital. The council has gathered. They demand your presence immediately to finalize the treaty and marriage contract." Leopold's jaw tightened. He turned to the messenger. "Ready my horse and send word that I follow directly." The rider hurried to comply, leaving them alone once more in the lantern light. For a long moment, Leopold and Anna stood in silence, the weight of duty and heartache hanging heavy between them. "I must go," Leopold said at last, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The council brooks no delay in matters of state." Anna nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. This was better, she told herself. A clean break, like setting a broken bone. Yet her heart felt as though it was being torn in two. The stable boys brought Leopold's mount, already saddled. He mounted smoothly, then paused, looking down at Anna and her daughter standing small and vulnerable in the stable yard. Words seemed to fail them both. What could be said in the face of such impossible circumstance? The candle in the lantern guttered, shadows dancing across their faces as they shared one last look of unspoken feeling. Then Leopold gathered his reins, and without another word, rode out into the darkness. Anna stood motionless, watching until the sound of hoofbeats faded to silence, her daughters pressing close against her skirts as tears finally spilled down her cheeks. The great council hall loomed vast and imposing, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows far above. Ancient tapestries, depicting battles and coronations, hung between tall windows, their faded threads catching the wan winter light. Prince Leopold sat rigid in his carved chair, facing the assembled nobles, who had gathered to witness the signing of the marriage contract. The marble floor echoed with restless footsteps as dukes and bishops circled like ravens, their silk robes rustling, their jeweled rings flashing as they gestured. Duke Werner, the most outspoken of the council, stepped forward with a disapproving frown creasing his weathered face. "Your Highness," he intoned, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, "the alliance must be sealed. The Duchess's dowry will fill our treasury, and her family's armies will secure our borders." He held out the contract, its red wax seals dangling like drops of blood. Another counselor, Bishop Heinrich, cleared his throat. "We have heard disturbing reports from your hunting lodge." His words dripped with disdain. "A common miller's wife living under your protection? Such behavior is beneath the dignity of our future ruler." Leopold's fingers tightened on the arms of his chair as whispers rippled through the gathered nobility. He could hear their murmured accusations: unfit to rule, scandal, lost his senses. "The people need a proper princess," Duke Werner pressed, "not some peasant woman who cannot even keep her marriage vows to her own husband." The whispers grew louder, more condemning. Leopold's jaw clenched as he thought of Anna, her quiet strength as she taught her daughters their letters, her gentle hands kneading bread in the lodge kitchen, her eyes bright with unshed tears as she tried to slip away in the dawn to protect him from scandal. "Your Highness," a third counselor added, "your duty to the realm must come before any temporary infatuation." Something snapped inside Leopold's chest. He rose suddenly to his feet, causing several nobles to step back in surprise. His voice, when it came, rang with authority that silenced every whisper. "My lords," he began, his clear tone filling the vast chamber, "you speak of duty to the realm. Yet what is a ruler's highest duty? To count coins in a treasury? To trade away his conscience for convenient alliances?" He stepped down from the dais, his boots striking the marble floor with purpose. "You mock Anna Lenz for her common birth, but I have seen more true nobility in her actions than in all your grand titles." Gasps echoed through the hall. Leopold continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "When her husband beat her in the square, did she curse him? No. She shielded her children. When I brought her to my lodge, did she seek advantage? No. She went straight to work in the kitchens, asking nothing for herself." He turned to face the assembled council, his back straight and proud. "You say she's beneath me? I say she rises above us all. While we plot marriages like merchant deals, She shows what real loyalty means. While we count our jewels, she counts her blessings. While we measure nobility by birth, she proves it through her actions. Leopold strode to the table where the marriage contract lay. With one swift motion, he swept it aside. I will not sign this contract. I will not marry the Duchess. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Bishop Heinrich's face turned purple with outrage. You cannot mean. I mean exactly this, Leopold declared, his voice cutting through the chaos. I claim Anna Lenz as my bride. Her courage, her virtue, her strength of heart, these are worth more than any duchess's dowry. If you want to see true nobility, look to her example. The council chamber descended into pandemonium. Nobles shouted in protest, clerks scurried with dropped papers, and the bishop seemed on the verge of fainting. But Leopold stood unmoved, his declaration hanging in the air like a challenge to centuries of tradition in that moment of uproar. As shock waves rippled through the assembled nobility, Leopold felt a profound sense of rightness. For the first time since inheriting his title, he knew he was acting as a true prince should, not by following cold political calculations, but by honoring the nobility of the heart. Chapter 10. Hearts United words spread through the countryside, like wildfire about Prince Leopold's declaration in the council chamber. At the hunting lodge, servants whispered the news in hushed tones, their eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Anna, overhearing these murmurs, felt her heart constrict with fear. We must go, my darlings, she told her daughters as she hastily gathered their few belongings in the dim light of dawn. Marguerite helped fold their simple dresses while Lise clutched their mother's skirts. Little Katya sat on the bed, her lower lip trembling, but before they could slip away, the sound of hoofbeats and carriage wheels echoed through the courtyard. Anna's hands shook as she heard boots on the stairs, then familiar voices in the hallway. The door opened, and there stood Prince Leopold, flanked by royal guards in their ceremonial uniforms. My lord, Anna whispered, dropping into a deep curtsy. Her daughters followed suit, wobbling slightly. Leopold's eyes softened as he saw their packed belongings. You were leaving again? He asked gently. I cannot bring scandal to your name, Anna replied, her voice barely audible. There will be no more talk of leaving, Leopold declared. He turned to his guards. Show in the church official. A robed clerk entered, carrying official documents. The petition of Hans Lenz has been dismissed, he announced formally. His documented cruelty nullifies his claim. Leopold stepped forward, his bearing both royal and tender. To everyone's amazement, he lowered himself to one knee before Anna. I have defied the council, rejected a duchess, and chosen to follow my heart, he said. Anna Lenz, will you grant me the honor of your hand in marriage? Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks as she whispered, yes. The weeks that followed passed in a whirlwind of preparation. The banns were read in church 3 times, as required by law. Each Sunday, more villagers crowded the chapel, craning their necks to see the woman who had captured their prince's heart. On the wedding day, the chapel bells rang joyously across the winter landscape. Anna's daughters, dressed in fine silk gowns, practiced their curtsies until they were perfect. The villagers who had once watched Anna's humiliation in the square now stood in respectful silence as she walked past in her bridal gown. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows as Leopold and Anna exchanged their vows. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, he leaned close and whispered the words that had changed her life that gray morning in the square. You're coming with me now, forever. Anna smiled, tears of joy gathering in her eyes. Her heart, once burdened with fear and shame, now felt as light as the winter sunshine streaming through the chapel windows. At last, she was at peace. If something in this story whispered to your spirit, stay a while. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. The Next story may be the one you didn't know you needed.